All right, let's have a chat to Ben Morton. Ben Morton is a member of the Federal Parliament. He is the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister in Canberra, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now from there because there's a bit to talk about with him on Australia Day. Minister, good evening. How are you?
Hey, good to be here, mate. How are you going? Happy Australia Day.
Good. Now, Ben, no doubt I have got much of what I have just said about Australia Day wrong. I've put it in the wrong order, or someone somewhere is going to be able to find the one hair to pull it all apart. But unlike SAS,
mate, you're always in trouble, so there you go.
Yeah, correct. But unlike SAS, who can sell their house in Canberra for $1.9 million, I'm doing it off the top of my head and doing a lot of it from my heart. What's your sense about Australia Day? And again, I'm not talking about having a go at those who think it's about Invasion Day, because we know what the history of the country actually was. But what I'm saying is that those who waved a flag today, or those who shared a sausage today, weren't doing it in white pride. They were doing it in enjoyment of a peaceful and pretty awesome nation.
Mate, I love this country. The pride that I have for this country is immense. That's where Australians feel about this country, and Australia Day is a great day to come together to demonstrate that and to spend time with your family and friends. And quite frankly, I think mainstream, middle, huge majority of Australia are sick of hearing people shouting at each other from one end of the spectrum to the other. They're shunning that. They support Australia Day. And that's why the Australia Day Council this year, its core message is that we're all part of the story. Reflect, respect, but importantly celebrate as well. And I'm pleased to see that this year, I think some of the political arguments that we're seeing of the past are starting to diminish, because I think, quite frankly, we're sick of it. We want to be proud of this country, but we do want to reflect just on our history in a way, because we're so thankful of what we are and what we can be in the future.
But also, I think that what the industrial left never quite understands is those who sort of think that they're morally superior to all of us, is that we don't understand the chronology of events that go from, 1770 all the way to today. That people don't understand what the interaction was with Indigenous Australia, that don't understand that terra nullius was wrong, that don't understand all of those things that were wrong. But in the same way that we don't want our kids to look at the Japanese in a fashion that is different because their forefathers were involved in a bloody battle with their forefathers, we are all part of the collective story, which is why you keep finding the way to go forward, not the way to go back and say, well, you're more at fault than I'm more at fault. You who never did anything wrong is more responsible for I who did nothing right.
Well, that's right, and that's why I think reflecting on our past, honestly, understanding it, respecting the contribution of everybody, is the best way in which we can then come together to celebrate the future. That's what the message is this year. Better understanding of each other, better understanding that we're all part of the story of Australia. And why do we do that? Because we have an optimism and we have a pride in this country. Today, when I was with the Prime Minister for the citizenship ceremonies here in Canberra, the pride that those new citizens had on their faces, coming to this country, wanting to be part of this because it's the best country in the world. They were joined by 27,000 people today becoming citizens of this country today. So there's something pretty good about Australia worth celebrating.
Yeah, look, it's this thing where people are going to automatically go, oh yeah, two blokes on Sky News, just let's keep it the same way it was in 1986, and that's no, like, bullshit, frankly, is that we get it, right? We get it, and that's why, we start with Welcome to Country. It's why the Indigenous flag flies next to the national ensign in so many parts of our capitals. It's why we take pride and enjoy the idea that a Ken Wyatt can make it all the way to Cabinet, or Linda Burney all the way to Shadow Cabinet, let alone stories about judges or footballers or whatever it is. But what I sort of find, I revel in that concept about those who live in modern Australia who want to pretend that there is some way of either undoing it or living in it but equally undoing it. I find that weird. But let's talk about one of the commemorations that the Prime Minister has put in place, which is this special medal, which is going to be for those that have been fighting these fires. That's been happening for some time. It wasn't just worked out in the back of a napkin last night. Tell us how this works.
No, that's right, mate. Look, the Prime Minister's been very clear to me, as the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister, that He wanted to make sure that we appropriately recognise those emergency service personnel and volunteers that have really stood up and have actually demonstrated what's so great about this country, what's so great about communities coming together and the resilience of our nation. And one of the ways we can do that is to request of the Governor-General to declare the 2019-20 bushfires as an eligible event for the National Emergency Medal. This is important because as a community, as a nation, we want to show our gratitude for those emergency service personnel and those volunteers that have stood up. We are a grateful nation to them, and the National Emergency Medal is something that they will be able to wear with pride, which will demonstrate that those individuals have done special and significant service to the community over this period.
So do the people who qualify is anyone who was fighting these fires, or people who did over X amount of hours, or people who were injured, or it's limited to those who lost their lives? How many are we talking about here?
No, well, look, there's only been 15,000 of these medals that have been provided in the past. They were the creation of the Black Saturday fires in Victoria. One of the things that we've done this time is that we've announced that there will be a medal. Obviously, the detailed criteria that we will go into is something that we'll work with the emergency management authorities after this bushfire season has finished. But to give you some guidance, those individuals in the Black Saturday fires that did paid work of 14 days were eligible. Those individuals that volunteered on the front line for 7 days were eligible, and of course it will be eligible those people that have passed and people that have come from overseas to assist. There will be eligibility criteria to suit those circumstances. We're not going to be hard and fast now on what that criteria is. We want to get it right, but we wanted to make sure that the appreciation of this nation was well known, and that medal will be made available for this significant emergency event.
Yeah, it's a time where there are still people that are out fighting those fires, but geez, I was pleased to see the number of people who were being cheered on in community celebrations, certainly up the main drag of Melbourne, or all over the place, where if there's been a fire truck, people would just, they always love seeing a fire truck, but people really enjoyed going near one today.
Mate, one of the things that happened a few weeks ago was that we saw some local councils and some events saying, look, we're cancelling our Australia Day events out of respect for the fireys. And look, in Melbourne, I know the fireworks aren't happening tonight, and the rationale that's been given is because of the Parks Victoria staff have been focused on the fires. I accept that, given that that's what's been stated. But those councils that have cancelled their events out of respect for the fireys, I think they got it wrong. I actually think that this Australia Day, more so than ever, particularly in those bushfire-affected communities, this is where, after what's been a harrowing few weeks, communities do want to come together. They want to put their arms around each other, and they want to say, we've been through it, but if you're going to go through things like this, how great is it, this Australian spirit of mateship and volunteerism that brings communities together, where we see people do fantastic, brave, courageous, and out of the ordinary things for fellow Australians. That is something that we need to celebrate and be very proud of. This self-loathing that occurs, quite frankly, I don't understand it. I'm a proud Australian, and we've all got much to be proud of, even in difficult times. In fact, especially in difficult times. Well,
also, Ben, let's think about this, right? Like most families have got some representation of the political spectrum around the table, right? There'll sort of be the uni student kid who sort of thinks that grandma, grandpa, you're so wrong on everything, all the way through. All the chats that happen across, right? It doesn't matter what sort of families that you started to grow up in, but the one
Even
thing
between husbands and wife, Paul.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. She'll be watching the tennis this evening. Hello, darling, if eventually the news gets back to you. But it's this thing where, Ben, is that people also, and this is where I think that the left always need to understand, right? And I have this saying, which is, the left does not own compassion, the right does not own strength. But if your constant messaging, if your constant way of showing that you are morally superior is by pointing and screaming and sneering and not understanding that a point of pride is to tell our story in this way or that way, if you don't come at it from that position, then you're not going to win normal people over, because normal people are always attracted to enthusiasm, not fanaticism.
Mate, I agree entirely. And again, I'm pretty proud and pleased of the National Australia Day campaign this year, It's a bit sombre because it talks about our country's highs and lows, but at the end it talks about we all have our different views. We have to respect each other. We have to listen to each other. And one of the things that always amazes me is that, you know, I actually think it's fantastic there's a diversity of views and opinions, but what I find is that there's segments of the community where they see different opinions that are not like their own. They want to shout them down. They want to make sure that those people that have different views to them must be defective characters in some ways. And so when I see someone that has a different view to me, particularly as a Member of Parliament, where someone comes up to you and makes it very clear they've got a very different view to you, mate, that makes me even prouder to be an Australian, and I welcome that. Isn't it great?
Correct. That's the joint I want to live in, one where you can come and have a go at me as long as you don't have a swing at me. All right. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it, mate. All the best to you, the PM, and all the rest of the team. And to you, mate. All the best.